Hi, my name is Juha Haavisto and welcome to my channel on which I focus on historical matters. Today I wish to go a bit deeper on the differences between historical research and popular history, or history writing. At the end of the video, I will place myself within the context of these two points and open up a bit more what are my aims working as a historian doing YouTube videos. In a nutshell, the basic difference between historical research and popular history is that the former is done by professional historians working mostly inside the academia. They do their work respecting certain rules and conventions specific to their trade and more generally requirements set to scientific knowledge. Everything else that does not fit to this quite strict definition is not historical research, but history writing or popular history. These can be anything from works that are drawn directly from historical research and put into a more easily accessible form. The simplest way to do this is to publish a paperback edition of a research book. Other works take more liberties following the guidelines. What they lack in accuracy, they make up in well-formulated arguments. Unfortunately, sometimes these works can be described as compromised in their integrity. So, how a piece of work, a paper, can earn a status of historical research? Historical research is a science, it is, but granted, it's a science that is somewhat different from physics, biology, chemistry, and other natural sciences. I'm going to take a second here to note that the problem that historians have is that ultimately they are uncertain what is remaining from the past. And ultimately, historians do not know beforehand what sources they have left in the archives, libraries, and other places, and what can be used to any specific question. That is the reason why we spend so much time in the archives reading and discovering sources. I give a personal example. In my PhD, I've been working on a specific person, seemingly the 17th century diplomat, statesman, author, left behind a significant. They are well preserved in the National Archives in Kew and in the British Library in London, among other places. However, for the most part, I ended up using almost exclusively his printed works and disregarded his correspondence. On the other hand, this was a matter of work economy. There was simply not time to read everything. But as a result of reading samples of his works, I can be quite confident that with the types of questions that I am working with, the development of economic thought, there is no need for his diplomatic correspondence. This would be almost completely opposite if the focus of my studies was history of diplomacy, for example. Every piece of historical research has to be based on questions and sources. But the postmodern problem is that almost anything can be used as a source. Different things tell different stories, and sources has to fit to the questions that the scholars are trying to solve. For example, a book is quite commonly used historical source. But a book can be used in numerous ways. It can be used to analyze its content, the ideas, and it turns out that a book can be judged by its cover. Scholars can focus on book as a material object and explain the historical developments by it. The circulation of books is also a common topic, as well as translations of books. They can be used to study book markets and publishing industry in general, or particular aspects of it. Secondly, sources are analyzed via a specific method. This is a theme for an independent video in the future, but I wish to point out that since the 1960s, there has been a fast growth of new methods developed and accepted by the discipline. As a result, the amount of topics covered in research has grown exponentially. Prior to the 1960s, history was almost completely Eurocentric and focused mostly on political matters. While there are still those areas that are silent or unrepresented in history, as a discipline, it is clear that things in this regard are much better than before. Here, I wish to stress that it is important to understand that sources and methods create the basis for any work in the field of history. Once an analysis is done, it is formalized in an argument and published. History as a science is repeatable because historians show their work. They use footnotes to identify points taken from sources and research literature, and thus other historians are able to form their own opinions on those same points. The difference between natural sciences and history is that history is always an interpretive science. It is not possible to produce a historical research that is objectively true. This does not mean that a consensus could not be reached. Popular history or history writing simply streamlines this process, but there is a lot more variety in the quality of these works. In the best case, historical research and history writing are very close to each other, to a point that they are almost indistinguishable from each other. But unfortunately, there are cases that are not so well made. This obviously begs the question, how to separate the two. You can look to the external features of the work. Who is the author? Are they professionals? Do they work in academia? Are they journalists who are specialized in historical matters or events? Who has published it? Is it a well-respected university press? Is it a general publishing house? Is it self-published? Are there footnotes or endnotes? And is there a bibliography in the work? Of course, there are also internal things. Is it well written? Is the argument clear? Is what the author or authors are claiming within any imaginable reason or some imaginable reason? If the answer to the most questions is no, then it's highly likely that the paper is not very good. So where does all this leave this channel? Will the videos presented here represent historical research or popular history? Maybe I add a drum roll here. These are history writing, and I believe historical research is very difficult, if not impossible, to present in a format such as YouTube. Although when this was released, I was working in the academia. But unfortunately, I do not have the resources to dive in so deep. But what I try to do is to be as close to the historical research as possible. And how do I qualify to do this? As you probably can tell, I'm not a professional video editor. However, I am a trained historian. I have 2 master's degrees and a PhD on the way. I have a deep understanding how the field works and how historical research is done. Furthermore, I will provide links to sources, books and papers that I go through in preparation to an episode, but I will not mention page numbers or other detailed information. At the same time, I acknowledge that my own expertise is limited to a quite distinct field, that is the early modern intellectual history. I also wish to emphasize that everything I present here are my own interpretations. I will formulate arguments to my best understanding of things. And importantly, I also reserve the right to change my interpretations. But if I do so, I will also provide my reasoning why I change my mind. My aim is not to provide answers in the form of historical research. This is simply a matter of resources available for me. Mostly, I will rely on the work of other historians, but whenever possible, I will use examples of my own work. What I wish to stress is that I do not have the true understanding of historical events, actions, or ideas. I believe that that is an impossible claim to defend. I understand that this sort of undecidedness can be frustrating, and believe me, a lot of the times it is, even for historians for themselves. But there really is not an easy way around this. What I hope the impact of this channel is that I will be able to provide entertaining and educational historical interpretations packaged in a specific format of YouTube videos. I will try to bring into these videos my education as a historian and expertise working on the field. And with this, we have reached the end of the 2nd episode. But before I sign off, I would like to ask you to subscribe to the channel or hit the like button if you like the content, and perhaps even tell a friend about it. In any case, thank you for watching. Until the next time.